My name is Kristen Bratt, Deputy Public Information Officer for the Park Authority, and I will be facilitating the meeting this morning. This is the first in a series of public meetings for the review of a potential resident curatorship at the Margaret White Gardens property. We are here today to carry out this process in a virtual format. The state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this meeting to occur as a physical assembly. And as such, we will conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated meeting platform, and the public may access this meeting through the designated link provided. During this meeting of the RCP evaluation team, staff will provide an overview of the application review process and discuss a preliminary review of the proposal under consideration in advance of the public hearing on March 29th at 7 p.m. At that time, the applicant will present their proposal for the evaluation team and public comment. No public comment will be taken during today's meeting. Before I turn the meeting over, I'd like to first introduce the meeting participants. Stephanie Langton, Resident Curator Program Manager for the Fairfax County Park Authority. We have David Bukta, Heritage Conservation Branch Manager for the Park Authority. Mary O'Lean, Operations Branch Manager for the Park Authority. Michelle Meadows, Senior Right-of-Way for the Park Authority's Planning and Development Division. And Robert Beach of Robert E. Beach Architects and the Fairfax County History Commission. And now I will turn the meeting over to Stephanie Langton.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kristen, and for the Public Information Office for hosting this virtual meeting. And thank you to the evaluation team members for supporting the program and providing your insight for this process. We're looking forward to exploring what's possible for the house and how to align the potential curatorship at White Gardens with other interests in the park. I'll begin with a brief overview of administrative items, and then we can open for an informal discussion. So we're beginning the third and final component of what is a three-pronged evaluation process for curator program applicants. Since the application period closed in November, for which we did receive 2 applications, an administrative review was carried out initially to ensure that the applications were complete and weren't missing any components. And it was during this time that one of the 2 applicants retracted his submission. So that left 1 application to proceed to the second phase of the process, the financial review. And this was carried out by the County Department of Finance. The application obviously successfully advanced through that stage. And now we arrive at our evaluation team review and scoring selection process. So this last step is comprised of a series of 3 to 4 meetings to review and ultimately score the application. It will occur over a 30-day public comment period, which closes on April 13th. And will include, as Kristen mentioned, the public hearing later this month, during which the applicant will share the proposal, and there'll be an opportunity for evaluation team questions and feedback and public comment. So in preparation for that meeting later this month, I'd like to use this meeting to kind of set the stage, provide background information, discuss how we will review and score, and put any initial questions, comments, considerations on the table at this stage that we would perhaps like to have addressed at the public hearing. So to that end, I've provided electronically, and if you need me to re-forward the link following this meeting, I'm happy to, a link to a package of materials to be used if necessary as reference during this review process. It includes a scope and parameters document for the program, and a document stating the program's goals and objective, just as a reminder, as a brief on the purpose of the program and its basic outlines and expectations. More specifically for the property, we included the John C. and Margaret K. White Horticultural Master Plan. Also in the packet is the 2017 property treatment plan that was done by our consultants, which outlines the condition of the property and the required improvements. Now, this document has since been updated in 2021 to account for tasks that were already carried out at the house, including wallpaper removal, mold remediation, painting, HVAC replacements, and within the calendar year, wood window repairs. This updated document also accounts for inflation. So this is in the packet as well. And then finally, of course, a copy of the redacted proposal in there along with the score sheet we'll use. So a brief overview of the score sheet. It'll be good to have on hand during the public hearing to take notes. And following the public hearing, we have 2 meeting times available. We'll only use one if another isn't necessary to discuss and provide our final scores. So the criteria we'll be looking at, established by the program development team years ago and used consistently through each curatorship evaluation process, includes first, the applicant's proposed use. Is it consistent with the master plan? Is it compatible with the surrounding neighborhood? We'll also look at the scope and nature of the proposed public benefit, public access. So the ordinance requires reasonable public access consistent with the nature and use of the property. We'll also look at the rehabilitation plan. Is it keeping within the first 5 years of the lease? Are the timelines and milestones feasible? What are any alternative proposals or proposals in addition to the required scope of work that's being considered? Experience and qualifications. Does the applicant have any experience rehabilitating a historic house, any related skills? Public response, of course, is very important. We'll consider the comments we receive in writing and during the public hearing. And then the overall presentation of the proposal. Is it complete? Is it concise? Is it well thought out? At this stage of the game, are there any questions on logistics or the materials provided? No? Okay. So I would like to use the remainder of this meeting just to provide an overview of this proposal and open a discussion if there's any initial response or questions, concerns. So I'll just provide a brief overview to kind of introduce the group to the basics, the basic items under consideration. And before I dive in, I will preface the applicant does propose several projects that are outside of the required scope of work. However, she indicates upfront in the cover letter, her willingness for it to be a discussion and to refine the proposal based on these discussions, which is a wonderful way. I mean, we make sure that this process that we put into place for the evaluation of proposals provides this opportunity, based on evaluation team feedback and public response. So I'll dive right into a high-level review. For the proposed use, the applicant and her husband, the Stout family, proposed to oversee and carry out the scope of work for the house. Her daughter's family, the Phillips family, would reside in the house. So there would be 4 adults providing labor towards the work, all proposed to fill the role of the curator. This proposal for the house also includes rebuilding the greenhouse, which is actually a task that is not part of the required scope of work, but of course would be a welcome addition. They proposed use of the barn. Now this was something we made optional pending the applicant's agreement to certain minimum requirements on what needs to be done for its repair, primarily addressing cracks in the foundation walls, water infiltration, structural issues, that sort of thing. They also proposed to use the barn for storage of tools and demonstrations and exhibits, which tie largely into their proposed public benefit, public access, and we'll talk about that in a second. And finally, the applicant proposes providing a, excuse me, a small accessory unit to be erected on the property. They propose on the site where an older homestead once sat when the Whites purchased the property, and then they had it kind of relocated, and that's the location they're proposing, which I'll have to look into those details unless anyone here can indicate exactly where that location is. But it generally a prefab module is what they're proposing for bathroom facilities or a small center for visitors, exhibits. These type of modules can, stack and connect and can be anywhere between 20 by 20 feet to 20 by 60 feet in size. And of course, the application makes it clear, that they're open to refining the proposal or adjusting based on feedback. So these are, big plans proposed for the property above and beyond kind of the scope of work for the house. So before we kind of discuss any initial concerns on this or considerations, let's touch on that public benefit component because it is largely related to the use. So this includes, they propose partnering with Green Spring Garden staff to enhance the horticultural experience for visitors, using these spaces, the barn, the additional structure I mentioned, for displaying multimedia content, self-guided tours, that sort of thing. They do also demonstrate interest in pond management and partnering in any way with Green Spring staff on their work in that department. They propose quarterly events that seem kind of loosely seasonally themed, making use of the barn, like I said, the other structures, animals, planting, use of tools, that sort of thing. They propose potentially partnering with Virginia Tech's Washington and Alexandria Architecture Center extension to explore how White Gardens and a curatorship at White Gardens can support thesis projects and the like. And it's important to note too that and we outline this in the application, during the application period, any curator contributions to the natural resource management work that's undertaken by Park Authority staff on the property will be considered volunteer. It won't go towards their, credited investment. So the curator program is a preservation rehabilitation program focused on maintaining the historical integrity of the house and its structures. So that's the primary focus. So at this stage, would you like me to continue my overview, or are there any initial questions, anything we would want to see from the applicant at the end of the month? Considerations on parking, increased traffic, perhaps master plan revision requirements, staff capacity, that sort of thing? I see, Mary, you're trying to.
Yes, trying to find the speaking button. I am concerned about parking and public access, since that is the main reason that White Gardens hasn't been developed thus far. And so I don't know what those implications are for someone who is not a county employee on a county facility. If they have more latitude in what they can do than we would as employees, or if we had the site. So that's my number one concern there. Number two is the location of this modular structure might be in the area that's currently under horticultural development. And so that might not be the best place for it. But there might be, I'd have to look at the map. I haven't looked at it in a little while. There might be another location for that would be in the old vegetable garden spot. Or possibly where the Camellia House chicken house was. It's behind the barn, almost if not directly behind the barn, then if you go behind the barn slightly to the right, is where those structures were. The house was basically if you're headed toward the barn, the driveway that's beside the barn, you go immediately to the right. There's a large magnolia there. So it's basically to the right of that. And so I think, I don't know if Judy has looked at the horticulture plan to have more current knowledge. And so I haven't looked at that in a little while to be able to, put A and B together.
Gotcha. Yeah. And we can bring those details together in advance of the public hearing. I will say too, the applicant does reference I believe it is the master plan, potential proposed parking in the area of the barn.
Right.
And maybe utilizing that area to address parking concerns. That'll have to be something that we discuss as well. Yeah.
What will be, so I guess if they have this modular structure that they're proposing, that would have restrooms. I don't know if we have programs and such for the public, what our restroom requirements are. Of course, there's always portable toilets, but that can be a little bit of a pricey thing. And if it's part of the gardens and it's volunteer, where the funding comes for that. And then
Sure,
I guess as long as, I was gonna say, as long as I have the floor. So one other comment is that if they were looking to put exhibits, et cetera, in the barn, let's say that's a viable proposition, is that will we require them to have an interpretive plan, which is what we currently require with our sites in my section.
Mhm.
And so, we Tammy is putting together a waysides plan, sort of it's an SOP for some of these things. So we would have to address how what we currently require for our sites applies to this particular project.
No, that's a perfect note. I didn't consider that. That might be a good opportunity too, to go into experience and qualifications, because it is quite what they propose or what they share in the application. It's quite extensive and varied. A member of the Phillips family, incidentally, was a docent at Sully, while the other
I thought that name was familiar.
the other did postgraduate work in interpretive program development for curatorship of historic sites. So I would imagine, we'd be able to kind of align any kind of mission and procedure there. They also have experience working on buildings and restoring family homes. And interestingly enough, too, aquaponics, which I had to look up, but it's the food production system that couples aquaculture with hydroponics and potentially incorporating that into the greenhouse that they restore. But so those are the sort of experience qualifications, but I did make a note about the interpretive programming requirements. Certainly they propose the module to include bathroom facilities and to be ADA compliant. So a few other items more related to, unless there are any other questions, did I jump is there any? No. The rehabilitation plan, another component we consider in the application review, of course. The applicant provided a very detailed table towards the end of the application, in which kind of each item in the required scope of work is given a year of completion. Within the first 5 years, year 1 will focus on kind of livability, functionality. Year 2, elements of the treatment plan related to restoring the historic character of the house. Year 3 would be completing the work for the house and beginning and completing restoration of and rebuilding of the greenhouse. Year 4 would focus on the barn, and year 5, this ancillary building structure. So the applicant's proposed estimated project costs are $468,000 roughly, which does far exceed what is required in the adjusted treatment plan from 2021. That was about $330,000, I believe, for the house and the barn. And based on these values, the way we calculate the length of lease is roughly we take the fair market rental value and we divide it into the total estimated cost of the project. And so currently with these numbers, the applicant is proposing a 33-year lease. Now, some of you know based on zoning ordinance and ordinances within the county, we cannot allow a lease that's 30 years or above. So 29, we'd have to work with something in the 29-year range. So that's another kind of thing we'll have to discuss. But other than that, we've kind of covered the basics. So again, I'll open the floor if there's any discussion at this stage, any items you would like me to ask the applicant to include in their presentation. We can sort of wrap up the meeting with discussion. No other.
Stephanie, do you plan to have tours of the facility?
In advance of the public hearing for eval team? Yeah, absolutely. We can schedule something. Happy to.
Okay,
I'll follow up with an email.
thank you.
Yeah.
Stephanie, can you explain to us what their obligations are for ADA compliance? I just sort of quickly breezing through their application. And so I know one of the reasons that we didn't pursue much of a public access for the house is because making even the restrooms where the current restroom is ADA compliant would have been impossible. And so,
Okay.
so what are they required to do as far as their renovations and ADA compliance?
Within the application, there's a section about accessibility where we ask that they propose what they would do and how they would address those types of concerns. We don't put forth any direct kind of requirements at that stage, but in working with our current curators, even if there is anything that's done, we require them to work with the Park Authority's ADA coordinator, or I don't know the title, to make sure it's in keeping with the standards of the Park Authority.
Okay.
And that typically impacts commercial applications, Mary, not so much residential. So in the case of this applicant, you know, they're going to offer tours. If they needed to, they could show a video of the second floor if they had to, but likely they wouldn't do that. So.
Good point, yeah.
And I did notice in the terms of the alternative structure, that will have ADA compliant restrooms proposed. So if we approve that, which we have not. So.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. That was an excellent job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Well presented, and I think we have a very viable application here. There may be some things we want to work out with the applicant, but I feel moving forward, we will be able to do so.
Stephanie, do you have any other business or anything you need to bring up?
If there aren't any other questions, and as always, feel free if questions do come up over the month before the meeting, feel free to reach out and let me know. I think we might be wrapping up.
Great. Well, that concludes our meeting then. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the Fairfax County Park Authority's YouTube page and the Fairfax County Park Authority's website so that it's accessible by anyone who would like to view. Thank you again for your interest in historic preservation in Fairfax County and the Resident Curator Program. Have a good day.
Thank you all.